Uzumaki. Now, we all got into this media for different reasons. I myself have heard of Junji Ito for his disturbing and creepy narratives and art. So when I heard his most popular series, Uzumaki, was getting an adaptation, I didn't hesitate to pick up the manga and read. Mind you, it's only 19 chapters, and I was disturbed but engaged the whole way through. The story doesn't rely on jump scares, but on existential dread and the horror of the unknown. It hints at forces beyond human comprehension, echoing cosmic horror themes. Combined with disturbing transformations and body mutations, Uzumaki offers a chilling experience. But I thought to myself, could they translate this art into an anime format successfully? And the answer was no. To keep it blunt, this adaptation was rough, and for more than one reason. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I myself could do a better job, but a 5-year-long project with a big name studio like Production IG collabing with a big American brand like Adult Swim, I would never expect to get this end result. Now, I know the majority of fans were upset and disappointed by the animation itself, which definitely had us cackling and confused at times, but for me, it was the adaptation and pacing that was so off-putting and frustrating. As a manga reader, they skipped out on so much important information throughout the episodes that it made characters lose their value and development from the manga. To make matters worse, they weren't even going in chronological order of the chapters either until the last episode. Let me show you guys what I mean. Let's skim through these episodes and point out some good and bad moments. Episode 1. Right off the rip, we have to appreciate that this was in black and white. If they decided to color this anime, it would have completely lost its eeriness. Hot take, but the animation has been rough since episode 1. A lot of still frames or weird character movements. Sometimes the weird character movements would actually benefit them in certain scenes, as it helped brings out the bizarreness of what's going on in this town, but at other times, not so much. One thing I will say is they made sure to adapt the important pages or creepy panels in the manga. They surprisingly did a good job with them, like the popular page of the dad sitting in the room full of spirals, or this scene where we watch the dad spin his eyes round and round to show the audience how creepy he's been acting lately. They even threw in this funny moment of Kiri doing the same. But like I mentioned, everything is so fast paced, you miss out on a lot of character connections and foreshadowing. In the first episode, they adapt chapters 1, 2, 3, and 8. The weird part was in the first episode alone, they only adapted all of chapter 1 and 3, but they skipped the rest of 2 and saved it for episode 3. Here's my problem. In the manga, this spiral all takes place in Shuichi's home first, affecting his mother and father. It then begins to spread to the rest of the town and affect everyone else. What happens with Shuichi gives him anxiety and he becomes a bit of a shut-in, but he always tries his best to help Kiri. But in the anime, it completely removes how much his parents' passing affects him, and it makes it seem like he's always there to the rescue. But as you can see in the manga from chapter 3, he looks completely hollow, like he's given up on life, and it continues to look like this throughout the rest of the manga. I guess they assume most people watching hadn't read the manga, so they could try their best to make the story flow in their own way, for adapting purposes, but even anime only fans were pointing out how fast paced everything was. But aside from that, episode 1 was pretty decent, and it doesn't carry most of the complaints aside from the Shuichi family. But episode 2 isn't safe. Here's my problem with episode 2. Everything was off. Pacing was too quick, they were adapting half chapters and concluded them, and the obvious elephant in the room, the animation was the worst of the 4 episodes. They adapted 6 chapters poorly. They started with chapter 8, then they jumped to chapter 5, then to 7, then to 2, then to 6, then to 9. It was all over the place. And I honestly don't want to hate on the animation like everyone else has, but this beach scene is unforgivable. What the hell am I looking at? Here's another scene of them running weird. Even the whole hair scene was giving me a mini stroke while watching. Now for the adaptation from the manga, they completely skipped scenes that they could have added in. With the 2 lovebirds, when the boy gets punched by the brother, he twists in the manga, kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen later on the beach scene. But in the anime, they didn't add it at all. Not to mention, they also completely changed many character interactions to save time on pacing, as if they were in a rush to begin with. The Jack in the Box kid gets hit by a car and doesn't make it. Then we see the Jack in the Box jump out. But in the manga, she actually holds onto it and opens it at home, and we get a different process to the climax in the manga, which I'll save for episode 3. All in all, this was definitely the worst episode, and it's kind of hard to praise it for barely doing the bare minimum. Okay, episode 3, in my opinion, was the smoothest and best looking episode yet. And I use the word looking loosely because it's going more from a 5 out of 10 to a 6, 7 out of 10 in terms of animation and how well they adapted it. They adapted chapters 2, 4, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Surprisingly enough, most of those chapters take place in the hospital, so the story writer decided to sacrifice 2 episodes to make episode 3 flow nice, I guess. But the overall animation was much better. I think for the mosquito part of the episode, they did a great job making these pregnant women look disgusting as they feed on the blood of the men in the hospital. They even threw in some nice camera angles to help keep us scared, as well as add Easter eggs of the "Here's Johnny" scene while the girl was being attacked. The only main issue I had was the attention to detail throughout some of these scenes. Maybe I'm just nitpicking, but when she was in the room filled with mushrooms, it felt a lot emptier compared to the manga, and they did this in a couple other scenes. For example, when the lady finishes her surgery by putting the baby back in her, for obvious reasons I can't show either the anime or manga version of it, but take my word for it, a lot more detail is put into the manga to really show how creepy and gross it was. The hospital scenes were all done pretty nicely, and I really didn't have any issues with it. Now, the house episode, they did do a good job of adapting most of the chapter and keeping that eeriness feeling. It's what happened after that I had a problem with. Literally in the last 30 seconds of the episode, they threw in the Jack-in-the-Box kid with the most disappointing animation yet. In the manga, Kiri and Shuichi get a weird feeling after a toy Jack-in-the-Box tells them that the kid will come back to life. So they go visit his grave to see he does come back, and he chases them back to town. His guts are falling out, limbs are breaking off, his body's in shambles, even a leftover car suspension is in his stomach, allowing him to bounce to them until he eventually falls apart. Which is much scarier in the manga, but you mean to tell me they gave this guy 30 seconds, he randomly shows up, jumps around with this goofy animation, and they call it quits? This isn't bad animation, this was lazy animation. I don't know who approved of this, but someone look into the staff and make sure they never touch any more upcoming series, please. And finally, the last episode. At this point, everyone has lost faith in the series and just hopes they adapt the ending correctly, which thankfully they did. It was just as fast paced as the other episodes, with it even being the longest, and the animation was decent as usual until they hit us with a PowerPoint transition sequence for some reason. Typical eldritch horror ending, but it was a hell of a ride. Well, the manga was at least. The anime adaptation was a complete bust in my opinion, and I think this should be used as an example. I think there's plenty of manga series that just don't need adaptation for this exact reason. If they aren't going to get studios who want to put at least 70% effort into their work, why even put it out? Maybe this adaptation does boost manga sales and help promote it in the West, but now it might put a bad name to Junichi's work. I don't know, I'm even tired of discussing this topic in the first place. It's been nothing but Uzumaki slander for the past 4 weeks, and now it can finally rest. Thank you guys for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, be sure to press the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Comment down below your thoughts on Uzumaki because I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts on it. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.